Hello, welcome to another math video. This is going to be our Chapter 3 review. So it's Tuesday, and how I thought I would review, because a couple of you have asked me some good questions related to the assignment. So I thought since our Google Form quiz only goes over certain questions throughout the assignment, I'll take a couple other questions in the assignment just so that you feel more comfortable doing the rest. So here's our assignment. Looks like this. You can download it from the stream page on the Google Classroom. And I'm going to spend some time going over question 1a. Okay, so for that function, which is in factored form, we need to find the zeros, the axis of symmetry, the vertex, the y-intercept, domain, range, convert the standard form, and give a little sketch. So it's a lot to do for one question. So let's go over this. Let me write the function up here. So p of x equals x plus 4 and x plus 2. Okay. Now the first thing says to find the zeros. Let me make this bigger. There. The first thing says to find the zero, or the x-intercepts, or the solutions. So that happens when this all equals 0. And that's going to happen in two places. Either if this bracket is equal to 0, because 0 times whatever that bracket will be 0. Or if this bracket is 0, because 0 times whatever that is will be 0. So we have two options. Now to make this bracket 0, that's x plus 4 equals 0. So rearranging x equals minus 4. So there's one option. Here, our other option is x plus 2 equals 0. Rearranging that, we get x equals minus 2. So these are our two 0 points. Now the next question says to find the axis of symmetry. To do that, you need to find the point perfectly in between those 2 points. Simple way to do it is just to add them. So we have minus 4 plus minus 2 and divide by 2. You're essentially finding the average of these points. And that will be where our axis of symmetry is. Now positive and a negative give you a negative. So we have minus 4 minus 2 over 2. That gives us negative 6 over 2, or negative 3. So our axis of symmetry is at x equals negative 3. Now the next question, let me just double check what the next two questions are. The vertex and the y-intercept. Alright. So this is the x-coordinate for the vertex. So after you find the axis of symmetry, you're halfway to finding the vertex. So we know that the vertex is going to be at the point minus 3 and then some y-coordinate. Well, how do you find the y-coordinate? Well, we're just going to substitute this x-coordinate back into our equation for x and x and figure out what the function equals. So let's do that. So we have p of x equals, we're going to substitute negative 3. So negative 3 plus 4. And again, substitute negative 3. So negative 3 plus 2. And negative 3 plus 4 is just positive 1. And negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. So positive 1 times negative 1 gives us negative 1. So our vertex is then at the point, or the coordinate, minus 3 minus 1. That's where our vertex is. Next, we have to find the y-intercept. The y-intercept, if you draw a graph, is where it crosses the y-axis. Now the y-axis has a coordinate of x equals 0. So we need to figure out what is the y value when x is 0. So we're doing the same thing we did here, except instead of substituting negative 3 in for x, we're going to substitute 0 in for x. So I'm going to put a 0 in instead. Doing that, we get 4 and 2. And 4 times 2 is 8. So that means our y-intercept is at the coordinate 0 and 8. Okay, so there we have our vertex and our y-intercept. Next is domain and range. So this is a question some people have asked. How do I find domain and range in factored form? Well, you first need to find your zeros. From that, your vertex. And then, looking at your value for a, there's no value there, so it's plus 1. It's a positive value, so that means our graph opens up, like this. Which means our vertex is a minimum point. That's one thing important to know, that it's a minimum point. And we also did figure out what the vertex is. It's the point -3, -1. That's your y-coordinate right there, -1. Now, domain isn't too bad. Your domain is just all real values in the set of x. All values for x, because this is going to go outwards, 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 outwards forever. So it's going to hit every single value for x. Your range, however, is going to be for all real values in y, but there's going to be a condition there. Since this is a minimum point, it's going to be all the values above that point. So y is going to be all the values greater than or equal to that point. And what's the value at that point? Well, what's the y value at that point? -1. So -1. There's our range. Alright, let me just see what other questions there are. Standard form, and then we'll do a sketch. Okay. So, standard form isn't too bad. All we're going to do is expand that. And to do that, we're going to FOIL it. It's like this. We've done this many, many times. So we have x times x gives us x squared, 4 times x, 4x, 2 times x, 2x, and 4 times 2 is 8. Okay. Collect like terms. So we have a 4x and a 2x, which gives us 6x. And that's it. That is in standard form. Now sketching it, we have some points. If you remember our zeros, we have -4 and -2. Okay, we know it opens up. We had a y-intercept of 8. So the y-intercept was somewhere up here. There's 8. Okay, and we know that the vertex was right in between here at -1. Okay, so opens up like this. Do the same on the other side, and there's your sketch. Okay. All right. I'll let you do B and C on your own. Make sure you do them before you try the quiz. Right? The quiz is the exact same questions. Right? And let's go over another question. So moving down, 2 is very similar to 1. You just give in certain information, you need to find the rest. All right, let's go over 3. We'll do 3a. 3a says sketch the graph of each quadratic function using the x and y intercepts. Write the corresponding quadratic equation and state its roots. Okay, the quadratic equation is how you find the x-intercepts. So it does say to sketch it using x-intercepts. Well, we're going to do that by writing the quadratic equation and finding those intercepts. So the quadratic equation is when it all equals 0. So 0 equals, let me just look at the function. I don't have my glasses on. X squared plus 5x minus 36. Alright, so there's your quadratic function. Now if you want, you can try and factor it. You can use the quadratic equation, whatever is easiest for you, and that will give you your two roots, which are your x-intercepts. Your y-intercept is really easy to find in standard form, because you set x equal to 0. Right? So if this was y, you set x equal to 0, your y-intercept is minus 36. Okay? So let's write our y-intercept just to the side here, because we'll use it later when we graph, is 0 minus 36. Alright, we also know that it opens up, because that's our sign for the a value. It's positive. So I'll just make that note too. Opens up. Alright, so all I need is the x-intercepts. Okay, so we could try and factor it, or if you prefer the quadratic equation, that's fine too. If we were to try and factor it, well, let's see, you could look at maybe 12 and 3. That doesn't seem to work. Those two numbers don't add to give you 5. You can look at 9 and 4. Those seem to work. So here we have x. Right? If we add 9 and subtract 4, does that work? Well, 9 times negative 4 is negative 36. Positive 9 minus 4 is positive 5. So that works. Now for this to equal 0, again, either this bracket can be 0 or this bracket can be 0. That's why we have two roots. For this one to be 0, x would have to be negative 9. For that bracket to be 0, x would have to be positive 4. So those are our two roots. So to sketch that, here are x-intercepts, negative 9, positive 4. Our y-intercept is somewhere all the way down there. And just remember, your y-intercept is not, I forgot to make this big again. There we go. Just to remember, our y-intercept is not necessarily our vertex. Your vertex is right in between your x-intercepts, and in this case, your y-axis is not there. Somewhere over here. So your vertex will probably be down there. So we're going to open this up. Somewhere down there. Go through our intercepts like so. And there's our sketch. Alright. So again, set this equal to 0. There's your quadratic equation. You can solve for your roots by either factoring or using the quadratic formula. Find your y-intercept by setting x equal to 0. And that would be our y value, right? This is y, right? You set x equal to 0 and solve for y. In that case, it's just minus 36. And then you can sketch a graph with your intercepts. Okay, let's look at one or two more questions. All right, question 4 says, check if the given number is a root of the given quadratic equation. If it is, find the other root. All right, let's look at D. D says, figure out if x equals 4 is a root of this quadratic equation. 3x squared minus 16x plus 16 equals 0. And if it is, then find the other root. Let's make this big. Okay. So to do that, you could just factor that, right? You can use decomposition, or you can use the quadratic equation, or to figure out if this is a root, substitute it in, see if it equals 0. So let's look at the left side of the equation. left side of the equation is 3x squared minus 16x plus 16. So the question is, if I substitute 4 in for x, will this equal 0? Let's test it. 3 times 4 squared minus 16 times 4 plus 16. Okay, 4 squared is 16, so we have 3 times 16 minus 4 times 16 plus 16. That's a lot of math to do in your head, but think of it this way. Here we have 3 positive 16s, another positive 16, so that's 4 positive 16s, and then we're going to subtract 4 positive 16s. Right, so it looks nicely written this way because you don't really have to figure out what 4 times 16 is. We have negative 4 of them, and if you want, plus 16 plus 3 16, that's positive 4 16. So this does equal 0. So yes, x equals 4 is a solution. So we need to find the other one. Now I haven't reviewed the quadratic equation, so let's solve this one with the quadratic equation. Although you could easily just try to factor it, because we already know, let me just do both. We already know that x equals 4 is a solution. So if I were to factor that, right, I could write x minus 4 times something else equals 0. Right? Now x times what gives you 3x squared? Well, there's only one answer there, 3x. So all you need to find is that value. Okay, so minus 4 times what gives you positive 16? Well, there'd be another minus 4. All right, let's check this. This gives us minus 4x and minus 12x, and those add to minus 16x. Okay, it's probably the easier way to do it other than the quadratic formula. But we still need to figure out what this root is. So what would x be to make that bracket 0? So let's set 3x minus 4 equal to 0. Solving this, we're going to bring the minus 4 to the other side by adding it to both sides. Do the opposite operation. If this is being subtracted, we're going to add. So we have 3x equals 4. And then x is being multiplied by 3, so the opposite operation is division. So divide both sides by 3. And so x equals 4/3. Or simply 1.3333. Okay? And you could do that using the quadratic equation as well. Alright, I think that's all the questions I wanted to go over. Let me double check. Yeah, okay. So work through the rest of the assignment. The quiz isn't due until this Friday, but everyone has different circumstances, tough times. If you need more time, just take more time. And then make sure you're printing off, if you can, the package for Chapter 5. We're going to be doing trigonometry next. I'll start that in a couple days, but for the next couple days I want you to work through the assignment and try to complete the Google Form quiz, which I have already posted. Alright, and if you haven't done so already, because many people haven't done the Explore Learning Gizmos yet, there's the two, one on vertex form and one on factored form. So please make sure you go and do that. Alright, okay, have a good day.